So this is Human Design Catalyst, Monday, July 1st, 2024, and today we're going to look at the Gene Keys line keynotes, and I'm just going to kind of open them up for discussion. We looked last week at some of the Gene Keys keynotes, and it was a lot of fun and kind of enlightening to see a different perspective of the lines. So I think today we'll just continue with that. So does anyone here have any familiarity with Gene Keys much? I mean, what are your guys' levels of connection? Have you read much of Gene Keys, or do you have any connection to it? Um, sorry, sorry about that. Middling level familiar. Okay. Yeah, I've never really gone deep in it because a lot of it is kind of I don't know. It's just it's Richard Rudd. It's his own thing. Like I've been reading. Each week now I read a little bit of like Alokanand Diaz. I'll read what the current gate is, and then I'll read Rudd, and it's kind of interesting to compare how different they are in their approaches. But I've learned some things. I've learned some things, and I enjoy it. Yeah, now says she likes it for the gift, shadows, and city frequencies. And Shango says she likes having it as a resource. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's kind of cool to me that it's something for us, basically. It's like something for people that are into human design. And as such, it's like, why not use it? I mean, why not at least check it out? It's kind of just cool that, I think I wouldn't be into it if I wasn't into human design. But I definitely am into it. I'm gonna take like 3 minutes. There's this fly that is just killing me. Literally, I can't get it. It's just. I keep opening the door, trying to get it to go out. I've tried the piece. I need to go. I need to take care of it. So, give me just 1 minute here. I'm gonna open the door again.
I do find it interesting when I meet people that are like super into Gene Keys though, that I do think it is something that is like a fractal thing. Like certain people get really into certain things for different, reasons. So I appreciate that Gene Keys is there for people, but and like I like both of them well enough, but I feel like it like if you know about HD and you're like a real like want to get like an intuitive like overarching understanding of it, it's like, oh God, you need HD.
For sure. I can't, I was just thinking or just was echoing Jonah's sentiment that I don't think I would be into gene keys if it weren't for human design.
Yeah, it's something where I can get into it because I'm into human design. So it's kind of cool to see like it's almost like if you're really into um, certain personality systems, you want to see how somebody else characterizes it, or if you're really into, yeah, like you're into something, you almost like want to hear like somebody else's take on it. And it's kind of like, okay, let's hear what their take is on this. Like, because I have my own understanding of it, let's hear what Richard Rudd says about Gate 49. But then half the time, I'm kind of agreeing with some of it, but also kind of just like confused by some of it, or I don't really know why he goes that way with it. But it has actually unlocked some things for me. Like certain keynotes he uses are really interesting. I liked last week how he says that I think you shared this now about the humor being a sort of higher frequency, for lack of a better term, of shame and like the connection between shame and humor. And it's just so obvious once you hear that. You're like, oh yeah, stand-up comedians, everything they're talking about is things that would cause a lot of shame and embarrassment, but instead we're laughing about it, so we're able to kind of overcome our shame. I like that. I like that kind of thing. Well, let's just start with line one. I think we can get through all of them today. And this is the general keynotes from Rudd on line one. I'll post them into the chat. Just a minute here. The house. Oh, in the house metaphor, it is the cellar or the basement. Yeah, we know this from Ra. It is the keynote of introspection. It's about the individual. He gives it the element of earth, which makes sense because very grounding, fundamental. And the physical system is skeletal, posture, bones, structure, muscles, and chakra 1. So that's an interesting association there. I never really thought of that. And then he gives the gifts. And the gifts are the foundational structure is the investigation. The quality is founding and introspective. The base chakra, self-empowerment. The mystical keynote is the mystic. So we'll have to see what the other mystical keynotes are. But this would be the mystic themselves. At a high frequency, it's rock solid inner certainty. And at low frequency, afraid of their own potential. So that's kind of interesting. I mean, it's like, I guess you get some of the authoritarian idea here with the inner certainty. Responds to full information and heartfelt directness. I like that, full information. I'm a 5-1. That's definitely true for me. I like to get the information, and I do respond to heartfelt directness. I do appreciate realness. It's very much attuned to trust. People think trust is a 6th line keynote. Sure, it kind of is. I mean, trust has something to do with the 6th line, but it also has something to do with the 1st line. It's who can we trust, and are they lying to us? Are they tricking us? Are they betraying us, not wanting to be tricked? Things like that. The wound is repression, insecurity, and feel. Oh, you have and fear. You have 7 first lines. Wow, I have about that many too. And Ra had quite a few. The wound is repression, insecurity, and fear. The healing, and this is from the Venus sequence, is certainty, confident, and grounded. And then the escape strategy is confrontation and hiding. I mean, that's interesting. It was like, so either, I guess it can either confront or it can run away and hide. So that's kind of like pursuer, pursued, or the 2 sides of the 1st line. And then the language pattern is all about the I. In the Saturn sequence, we have the planetary fractal wound. So I guess that's the wound of our 1st planet is disease. The racial wound is invasion. And the mythic wound is murder. So I guess at a fundamental level, the 1st line is worried about being killed. And the 1st line at a racial identity level has to do with being invaded, maybe by, by outsiders, invaders. And then in the Pearl sequence, the talent is production. So these are great producers. The entrepreneurial individual, it makes sense. The 1st line kind of trusting themselves, relying on themselves. Their brand is boldness. Their drama is the script writer. Their economy is their savings, living off their savings. That's kind of funny. And their pearl is simplicity, keeping things simple. Yeah, these are interesting keynotes. Any comments so far on the keynotes here? I'm not as familiar with the sequences, but it looks like we looked at 3 sequences. The Venus sequence, which had to do with wounding and healing. The Saturn sequence, which was kind of bigger picture. Planetary, racial, and mythic. And then the Pearl sequence, which has more to do with entrepreneurship and business. And then here are some of the mystical comments. Corpus Christi. Line 1 is the physical body, the DNA. And Rudd writes, the physical body forms the bedrock of all incarnation. On the physical plane, the collective memory of humanity is stored in your DNA. The physical body also has a subtle twin counterpart known as the etheric body, around which the whole science of true health is built. Over time, the physical body comes to reflect most closely the state of your astral body and its emotional states. So this is a very classic theosophical idea that the emotional body has a trickle-down effect to the physical body. So your emotional body, and if you're angry, then you become, you start to get physical ailments. If you're sad or grieving, or if you're in different emotional states that are unresolved, turn into physical afflictions. And this is maybe the way that works, is sort of at this fundamental level. It's like the ground level of the connection between the two. The advice: you are the mystic shaman. The first seal: relaxation. Wherever you have a line 1, there is a fear whose essence must be explored, researched, experienced, and accepted. You have to go down into your body in order to find its hidden radiance. So for those of us who have a lot of first lines, yeah, we have a lot of fears that we have to confront, a lot of fears we have to explore and research, and ultimately accept that we have those fears. And it looks like we do that through relaxation, that if we don't relax, the tension of our emotional body turns into physical dis-ease. So looks like that's part of it. Yeah, so I mean, this is a pretty deep way of approaching it. I mean, I do like that Rudd goes deep into some of these associations. I think part of it is like, when there's so many associations, I want to spend a whole class on each one. So, and then now comments, there's something about language unlocking something on the etheric level, speaking of gene keys as a modality. Absolutely. I mean, I definitely get a sense of certain words and certain terms, the frequency of them unlocking something or experiencing that differently because of that. So yeah, I mean, I do enjoy the use of language in gene keys, because sometimes even just hearing the word is comforting, and it kind of reminds me it exists. It's like I forgot that part of reality existed, and then you kind of get like a reminder, and you're like, oh, okay, that's right. Like, relaxation does work in the face of fear. Like when somebody's really afraid, but also the fears need to be explored and researched, and you ultimately have to experience them and accept them. And those are very comforting ideas, because I have all these first lines. I can get into a state of fear and a state of tension, and I do need to relax sometimes, and I do need to experience those things. So yeah, I like that. All right, line 2. The general keynotes in the house metaphor. This is the first floor windows open, lights on. Of course, this is from Ra. Dancing in the dark with the, or dancing with the lights on and it's dark out and people can see you and you can't see them. And this is about projection and the relationship compared to introspection and the individual. So introspection, projection, these are Ra's keynotes. Moving from the individual to the relationship. That's an interesting way of looking at the second line. I don't think in human design we talk as much about the second line and relationship, but it makes sense. We went from the 1 to the 2. Right, that's what I also agree, Rachel, that it's a weird reference to make the second line about relationship. But, I mean, it does kind of have something to do with that. I mean, when Ra goes deep into talking about, and she says maybe it's because it needs to be called out. Yeah, then now says being observed. Yeah, these are both parts of it. And then also Ra talks about the second line being the line of natural beauty in the mundane and just enjoying your life. And like, what's more enjoyable and natural than having that sort of bubble relationship where you get to just enjoy that connection. And then Rachel says also the second line is so dependent. Yeah. So it does have this connection to the other. And it's about the relationship, and its element is water. No longer the element of earth, but now the element of water. And it's no longer about the skeleton, the posture, the bones, the structure, the muscles. It is about the lymphatic system and the reproductive system in the second chakra. The prime gifts as a foundation structure, this is about being. So that's like what Ra says about the second line and its beauty of just existing. It's not about investigation, it's about being. It's not trying to figure out how it all works or what it all is, it's just trying to live it. Its quality is relating and expressive. So the first line is founding and introspective, so it's just trying to kind of get the solid foundation and to turn inward. The second line is no longer about that, it's about relating and being expressive, expressing itself. It's the second chakra, related to passion and relationships. And the mystical keynote is the seer. It's different than the mystic. The mystic can just go sit in the cave. The seer is looking into their crystal ball. They're scrying. They're doing divinatory practices and things like that. The high frequency is the expression of pure inner light. This is also very in line with Ra, where he talks about the second line and its expression of light and beauty. But the low frequency is unconsciously provocative. So not realizing how provocative they are, or making provocations and hiding behind pretending not to be provocative. Pretending that what they're doing is just normal or innocent or kind of feigned innocence, things like that. But unconsciously, they're really provoking people. And they're causing a lot of provocation through their actions, but they're kind of maintaining plausible deniability. Responds to high frequency with no agendas. So if the first line needs full information and it needs to have heartfelt directness, the second line needs high frequency and no agenda. It needs to not feel the pressure from the other. It just is waiting to respond to that high frequency. And Rachel agrees with response to high frequency with no agenda. Yeah, it's a nice way of phrasing it. In the Venus sequence, the wound is denial, anger, and being unaware. So this has moved on from repression, insecurity, and fear to denial, anger, and being unaware. And then the healing in the Venus sequence is naturalness, free, gifted, and shining. Their escape strategy is superiority, the feeling of being better than others, rather than confronting or hiding, as we saw with the first line. And the language pattern is you, the singular you. Accusation, it's your fault, you did this. It's not the self-sabotage of, I can't do this, I can't make it, of the first line. In the Saturn sequence, the planetary fractal wound is violence. The racial wound is liberation, which is interesting to think how that could be a wound to be liberated, but I guess so. And the mythic wound is rape, and this is something that that Ra has also touched on, which is that the second line is the one putting up the barrier, saying no, and then essentially people can violate their consent. And of course this can happen to anyone. I think it's irresponsible to assume that anyone of any configuration is more susceptible to violence of any kind than anyone else, or things of that manner. But it is one of the themes. And Now said he felt and Ra said he felt violated by the voice, says Now. Yeah, and that is something, he did say that the voice came to him through his only second line, which I guess was gate 40 line 2. So, yeah. So I think the second line here, we just have to remember that we can't, it's very irresponsible as a human design analyst to tell anyone that they're at more or less risk of any sort of violence, whether sexual or otherwise, or assault. It's just irresponsible. Like, there was a thread on Human Design Astrology Facebook group where people were saying, if you have 59.6 or if your kid has 59.6, protect them. It's like, protect every kid. Like, always be vigilant. Like, if you tell somebody that they're at higher risk of something happening, that's really irresponsible, because it's just a dangerous thing to tell people. But if you're telling them they're at lower risk, that's also irresponsible, because then they're going to be less vigilant. Like, no, we have to always be vigilant. I don't think that there's any like higher, lower risk, any of these things. What it's saying is archetypally there is a mythic wound, and it looks like sexual assault or rape is the one that, compared to the first line, that Rudd sees here, where the first line is murder and the fear of murder and things like that. Yeah, we shouldn't misunderstand what a mythic wound is. Exactly. It's an archetypal thing, not literal. And like, as an example, I really like James Hillman's book, Pan. It's actually released as Pan and the Nightmare, and it's on the raping god Pan, who's this like horned being who like basically chases around nymphs in the forest. And I mean, it's horrifying if we take it literally, but we have to understand what is this mythic symbolism of the super rapey god. Says, God, I'm going to put a content warning at the beginning of this. This is this one, I didn't realize we're going here, but I mean, it's good. It's like, we need to be able to talk about this stuff, and I will put a content warning, because I know that this can be triggering for people. So obviously, apologies for not giving the content warning earlier. But now looked up the book and got photos of cooking pans. Yeah, well, it's Pan and the Nightmare. Pan and the Nightmare. So, yeah, I will share the book. It is a really, really good book. It is James Hillman and Wilhelm Heinrich Rocher, and I may have the PDF lying around, but it's a great book. It's 2 essays, and it is. I mean, it is handled with care because it's a very difficult topic. It's a topic that does have the potential to trigger people, and it has the potential to trigger you whether or not you've experienced these things personally, because it's just a very powerful, archetypally charged topic. Yes.
So this is an interesting subject for me. I'm a 6'2", and I also throughout my like early life had a lot. I did a lot of work with like victims advocacy and sexual assault education and stuff like that. And it is like a very there's a difference between our mythology that we have around rape, and then the actual what really happens, like the wide spectrum of rape that exists. But I and so when Now said that, like, it's really important not to confuse what a mythic, so because it's like, yeah, we have this archetype, and this is super problematic in the reality of rape. That we have these like mythic understandings of what rape looks like versus like a more realistic idea of how sexual assault can look different in a lot of places. And so but like, and so like thinking about it really from that type of like, sometimes archetypes and stereotypes are just like a cunt hair from each other. It's like, it's very it's like, it's whether or not it's like something that we want to glorify or whether or not it's something that is like we want to vilify is completely, like, it can go either way too. So all this is really fascinating for me and making me think a lot about different sides to this whole issue, which is also like, it's a call out thing with the second line too. Like, it's not something that you usually will even talk about until it's called out.
That's absolutely true. I mean, these are things that yeah, there are a lot of barriers, and we also have to be very careful in talking about them. I think it was it Maya Angelou who said that talking about violence can also be a form of violence. And I think we've all experienced the people who are so hung up on their trauma that they're using really violent language describing violent things that have happened to them as a way of inflicting that on others. Like, you will feel the pain that I felt. I'm going to make you experience this. And that's also non-consensual. Like, literally, like, it's like repeating a microscopic version of that same trauma by non-consensually forcing certain language on other people. And so I think we do have to be aware of this stuff, and I will put a content warning on this one, just for anyone who's watching, that this is, it's an important thing to talk about. We're not going to not talk about these things. These are obviously aspects of reality, but they're also difficult. I do think James Hillman does a really good job of it. He's a projector. He was a projector, student of Jung, diverged from Jung in some significant ways, and he does talk about it in the complexity while also, like, using the symbolism of Pan. He is able to talk about what does this archetype mean for us, and what is it trying to show us. And he's not doing it from some sort of academic, distanced way. Like, he's doing it in a way that is very visceral and that you will feel, but it's also trying to show, like, it's just trying to show the fullness of the archetype. Like, he says at one point, like, if somebody's getting obsessed with this archetype, because that's what it's really about. It's like when an archetype possesses you or you become obsessed with it. How some conspiracy theorists are like reading every day about sexual assault, and they have like these amazing like fantasies, which they say are negative fantasies, but in a way that's also, you're saying the stereotype and the archetype are right next to each other. Well, so too is the finger pointing puritanical attack against criminal violence and the obsession with it. The people who listen to the true crime podcasts and the people who read all the conspiracy theories and can't get over their daily intake of hearing about it, it's almost like reading erotica. Like, sorry, but they think that they're against it, but they're actually taking some sort of weird enjoyment from reading about it. And so I guess he kind of picks up on that and shows like, when do these archetypes possess us and we get captured by them? And his conclusion is basically that it's when we have nymph-like beliefs and nymph-like attitudes, and the nymph conjures Pan. Pan will only come if there's a nymph. So it's like, if you have something in you that has this nymph-like quality, then you're going to maybe find yourself becoming obsessed with like listening to true crime podcasts and reading about like super violent, terrible things that have happened in the world, and kind of becoming focused on the rapists of the world because you're curious about that archetype, because something in you is like calling out to that archetype. So it's a very complex situation, but it is interesting in the context of line 2. And yeah, now it says it's the magnitude of the obsession. Yeah. And then, yeah, fetish, horror, all that stuff. And then Rachel says, really kind of into it. You mean you're kind of into it? Okay, well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'll go through phases. I can't really handle horror, but every now and then I'll want to see if I have the stomach for the darkness of humanity, and I'll like read something about, some serial killer or something. And then I'm like, nope, I still can't stomach it. I still don't have the heart for it. I just can't. So, okay. Let's go on to the next one here. Okay, so, wow, I don't know how to come back from that, but now we're looking at the Pearl sequence. Oh, no, Rachel left. Hopefully she's returning shortly. And it wasn't because of my comment there. Okay, so line 2, its talent is for marketing. Its culture is partnership. Its brand is passion or image. So that's interesting. Like, we looked from the brand of being boldness, the boldness of the first line, and now this is the brand as passion. This is selling passion. In the drama, it is the agent. So it's not the screenwriter, it's the agent. It's the one connecting people. I guess that makes sense with the partnership. Its economy is credit. So it's no longer savings, it's credit. That's kind of a funny idea, that it's working off of credit, that the second line is working off of credit. It's basically like, give me credit and I'll make it happen. Kind of trust me in advance. And its pearl is freedom. And then we have a little mystical analysis here. In the Corpus Christi, it is the astral body. So the astral body is the layer of the human aura that collects, stores, and transmits every kind of human emotion and desire, from the meanest to the loftiest. In the astral body, pleasure and pain are reflected as vibrational frequencies which effectively divide the astral plane into hell realms and heaven realms. The astral body is most active during sleep, when it processes your daily urges through the dream life. As the next layer to the physical and etheric body, the astral body also has a huge effect on your health. After death, the astral body is directly confronted with the true nature of every single emotional impulse you had whilst alive in the physical body. So every emotional impulse you had, you get to relive and get to experience directly. It's pretty wild. Advice. You are the seer healed by the second seal, omniscience. Oh, good. You're back, Rachel. I was hoping that was just a little glitch or something. I'm just reading about the kind of more mystical keynotes of the second line. Wherever you have a line 2, you have a blind spot that will emerge over and over in your relationships. Look into the mirror of your relationships and you will recognize this blind spot. It will always be called out by another. Always assume it's you. Anger into passion. That is really good advice. That is good advice. No, I think it is. I mean, that the second line is a blind spot, and when people have a lot of second lines, they're not going to necessarily see that they are the cause of some of these issues. So I like this advice. Always assume it's you. Don't assume it's somebody else that's wrong. I mean, I've heard second lines, and people that have a lot of second lines just have such strong denial. Like, there's no way that could be true, or that's crazy, or they made that up, or all these things. And it's like, no, like assume it's true. Like trust the person. Like don't assume that they're making things up. You know, that's kind of part of it. All right, line 3. Oh, and which tradition are the seals from? This is the esoteric part of Gene Keys, and I actually really love it. I'm doing a whole class series for Signpost, which I don't think is going to be live. I think it's just going to be recorded. It might be live, but I've been recording it on human design in the mystery schools. And so the one part I really really like from Gene Keys, it's Rudd's book, The 7 Sacred Seals, and it's basically about the apocalyptica of the Bible, which is another favorite topic of mine. It's a topic that I love studying. Like there are these it's like totally out of. Oh yeah, you'll look forward to it. Good. Yeah, and if I do it live, of course, I'd love for you to attend. But I think I might just record it and put it up. But and I already did the first one in that way. But basically, I really like are they called Apocrypha? The Apocrypha of, no. Yeah, no, it is the Apocrypha. The Apocryphal Gospel of Thomas and, no, is that, I'm thinking of something else. What is the term if it's about the apocalypse? It's like a whole biblical area of study just about apocalypse, like Book of Revelation and all that stuff. And it's pretty cool. I mean, it's really, the apocalypse means the unveiling of secrets. So like, yeah, maybe eschatology, that part of it, absolutely. And so it's something that I'll periodically study. He's back. I literally got him to go outside, and he came back in. It was like too rainy. I gotta name the fly now. Like I literally, it's like this guy's my friend. Like he's been flying around all day. I can't kill him now. I can't hit him now. Like we know each other too well. Jeff, I told you go out there. He actually did go outside for a while, and now he's like back in and buzzing around. But anyway, for a while I was really into it because there are these. I even have like a few books on it, where there are these 7 sites in Greece, apparently, and I guess around the Mediterranean, that are ruins of these like 7 sacred sites that are referenced in the book of the Apocalypse. Oh, I see. You're making the connection to Jeff Goldblum in The Fly. That's nice. I didn't make that connection. What is this? Okay, I see. I shared the audio version of it. There's a book as well, but I really enjoy the book, and I'm referencing it. 7 Sacred Seals, Portals. Jeff, come on, Jeff, please. Jeff, I'm telling you, Jeff, I know you like me, but this guy's really bugging me. Okay, well, anyway, it's a really cool aspect of Gene Keys. It's a very mystical, kind of going into the mystical side of it more, and I really like it. It's an interesting part of it. I like that Richard Rudd is not afraid of like losing fans or losing readers by going into the really mystical stuff. I respect that about him, that he's not afraid to venture into deep mystical waters. And Rudd had his own mystical experience, didn't he? Absolutely. He talks about it in the intro to that book, and yeah, he absolutely did. I mean, I don't know many people in this stuff that haven't, honestly. All right, so the third line, we know that this is the roof of the first floor, or sometimes seen as the stairwell up to the first floor. Well, he's British, so he means second floor in English. We'd say the second floor in American English, but the first being the first floor that's not the ground floor. And the theme of trial and error. In this, we've moved from the individual to the family. Sorry, the individual to the relationship to the family. So 3, it makes sense. The number of family, the number of the father, the mother, and the child. The element is fire. A triangle is Trinity, the Holy Trinity, absolutely. And the physical system, cardiovascular, belly, and the 3rd chakra. The foundational structure is trial and error. The quality is discovering and adaptive. So adaptation, that's another keynote from Ra. Just like trial and error is a keynote from Ra. And discovering is interesting. Usually we think of discovery in the first line, like the investigation. But here it does make sense. I mean, the 3rd line discovers all sorts of stuff. The chakra is the third chakra, energy and experience, and the mystical keynote is the Fool. I love that. That the first lines are the mystics out there, the second lines are the seers, and the third lines are the fools who are foolishly, joyously, hopefully anyway, going into life and oh, and then the high frequency is joyous. Yeah, perfect. Joyous, humble, and wise. The low frequency is unreliable, pessimistic, and evasive. And they respond to absolutely no pressure. I love that. The moment they have pressure, no, it's so true. There's a 3-5 coming to the conference who was so excited to work on a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, okay, I set it up, and you're going to be on this day and that place and this and that. And they're just like, So it's kind of it's a good reminder that the third line responds to absolutely no pressure. And 13.3 is pessimism. Yeah, that's where we get the keynote of pessimism. Absolutely. And the sixth line going through its pessimistic phase. The Venus sequence, the Venus wound is shame, embarrassment, and commitment issues. Healing the Venus is the experienced, wise, laughter, and tears. The escape strategy is frivolity, making it frivolous, so that they make things seem frivolous. And yeah, that can be a real problem. It's kind of like making fun of them or making them making them into a joke. The language pattern is he, she, or it. The complaint. He's to blame. In the Saturn sequence, going to the macroscopic, we see that the planetary fractal wound is starvation, the ultimate shame, starving to death. I never made that connection, that starvation and shame are kind of like two sides of it, like the ultimate shame of like not being able to eat or not being able to feed people. I know Ra said that the saddest thing in the world is a starving pregnant mother. And that can be really sad to see that. And the mythic wound is betrayal. There's actually a great, I'm really coming with the James Hillman today, but there's a great essay on betrayal by James Hillman that I will share here. Seems very, very third line. And did you write Jesus because you think Jesus was a third line, Rachel? Is that what you're saying? Jesus was betrayed?
No, that was the saddest thing in the world, the pregnant, starving woman.
Oh my God, yeah. It's like Jesus, that is like so sad. It's like sad to even. It's like one thing for a person to starve to death, but it's another for like a pregnant woman too. And you're like, but that happens in the world, and that is the shame of the world.
Like I deal with a lot of pregnant women, and I have been pregnant like many times, and the hunger that you feel when you're pregnant, like every time I'm pregnant, I want to do a cooking show, and like I had the appetite of a pregnant person is like you'll eat another person alive. So it's
an appetite for two, right? Yeah, or more sometimes, because some people are pregnant with twins or triplets. Wow. Yeah, and also just when you talk about shame, like the shame that we can't take care of our mothers and of our pregnant mothers, like that is like a collective human shame. That's like a deep human shame. The French philosopher Gilles Deleuze, he was asked why he writes, and he said, "For the shame of being a man. Is there any better reason?" And it's kind of like it's the least he can do to counteract the shame of all the shameful things men do, is to at least write and try to give voice to some of that and own up to it. In the Pearl, it's weird he puts the Pearl like right after the heaviest, like most intense, the mythic wound, But the Pearl, the third lines have a talent for strategy. They're strategic. I guess that makes sense. Their culture is a unit, so not a partnership and not an individual entrepreneur, but a unit. Their brand is humor and laughter. In the drama, they're the producer. They're not the screenwriter, they're not the agent, they're the producer. Their economy is risk. So it's like, how much risk can you bear? And taking risks to make money. And the Pearl is celebrity. So it's like the second line doesn't want to be a celebrity because then everyone will be bothering them all the time. And the first line just wants to live in simplicity. The third line actually gets to have the reward of celebrity. And line 3 at a mystical level associates with the mental body. The mental body exists at a higher frequency than your emotions and is constructed out of your thinking life. The mental body is greatly influenced by the collective mental body of humanity itself, which tends to pull our thinking down into the unfulfilled desires of the astral body, thinking about how to get what we want and so on. But as your thinking revolves around higher impulses, the mental body gradually disentangles itself from the astral body and takes on greater power. The mental body can also be used by the lower consciousness to repress the natural impulses of the astral body, which can also lead to problems in health at all levels. So these higher, same kind of trickle-down theme, these higher bodies causing problems. Advice: you are the holy fool, the third seal, universal love. Wherever you have a line 3, there's an issue of commitment inside you. It is a place of shame you will have to confront and learn to laugh about yourself. There is nowhere to hide. Everyone is your family. So that's kind of a nice reminder. I have a lot of third lines. I have more third lines than anything, so I guess I have a lot of commitment issues and issues of shame. I remember reading about my 12-3 design north node, fixed in detriment, the line of self-hatred, and how it's self-recrimination over having said the wrong thing. And yeah, there's a lot of shame there, and I think I have to learn to laugh about it, of like, wow, I really screwed the pooch on that one. I really said the wrong thing there. I really put my foot in my mouth, and being able to laugh at having made such a mistake in what I said and maybe hurt people's feelings, or even, experienced a bit of self-hatred over, wow, I really wish I hadn't said that. But what can I do? It's a place of shame that I have to confront and learn to laugh about. Line 4, the general keynotes, the floor of the second floor. Interesting. So I wonder if he means it's because the ground floor, first floor, second floor in British. So he's seeing this as a 3-story house, I guess. It's externalization. There's the keynote from Ra. And this is about the community. So we've kind of zoomed out from the individual to the partnership to the family to the community. A community is a group of families. The element is air, and the physical system is the respiratory, the chest, and the 4th chakra. The prime gifts. The foundational structure is conviction, that the 4th line can have a strong sense of conviction. Its quality is connecting and friendly. It's about the 4th chakra, love and community. And in the mystical keynote, it's the prophet. So this fits with the keynote that Ra gives for the 4th color. In high frequency, it's honest, open, and heartfelt. In the low frequency, it has a fixed view that hides behind pretense. Pretenses of being your friend, but they're really stabbing you in the back. Pretenses of being kind and generous, but they are really miserly, and so on. They respond to integrity, honesty, softness, and romance. So thinking of the 4th lines in my life and how they like that. And I always do give 4th lines the advice of being friends first with anyone, and how that does take a lot of integrity on the part of the other person. If the other person is attracted to them, to actually genuinely be their friend and to be soft with them. And there is some romance there. It is, I do think of like the 4th line more in like the romantic comedy kind of way of, there's usually a scenario where the person knows someone and you want them to end up together, but they can't. It's like we were talking about The Office earlier in the last session, and that had a very 4th line rom-com kind of vibe to it between Jim and Pam. The friends, yeah, Jim and Pam, definite 4th line there. And now says, lesson learned there. The lesson learned, is that in response to having integrity, honesty, softness, and romance with the 4th line, or was that to the previous, what we were talking about before?
To your note about being friends.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The need to have genuine friendship first, without pretense, like honesty, integrity, like someone who's not just pretending to be your friend because they want something from you, but they literally are just like legitimately your friend. In the Venus sequence, the fourth line is about the Venus wound, rejection, being unaccepted, and building an emotional wall, or the healing Venus, friendly, influential, and open-hearted. The escape strategy is acquiescence. They acquiesce to others, and that's how they escape. And their language pattern is we, in the nihilistic sense. We are all going down. We are screwed. We are, suffering, and so on. Zooming out to the Saturn sequence, we have the planetary fractal wound as poverty, which makes sense because the fourth line is about things like magnanimity and being beneficial to society and all of the humanitarian efforts, humanitarian aid, things like that. The racial wound is colonization, the colonization of others, and the mythic wound is revenge. The Pearl. Fourth lines have a talent for sales. Absolutely they do. I've seen it firsthand. Their culture is the network. Their brand is their heart, wearing their heart on their sleeve, feelings. In the drama, they are the director. In the economy, they get by on loans. And their pearl is charity, being charitable to others. Going to the mystical side, we see that this is about the causal body. Sometimes dubbed the soul, the causal body directly corresponds to the physical body, but at a higher level. It stores the collected goodwill of the human soul as a memory signature written in light. After death, the lower three bodies disintegrate, and only that which is refined and pure is drawn up and retained in the causal body. The causal body responds to higher visions and archetypes that lie beyond language, but that can still be conveyed through direct transmission on the lower three planes. As your causal body develops more lucidity, so the higher bodies can use it as a means of directing the lower three bodies to higher and higher frequencies. In this respect, the causal body is the great bridge between the lower and higher planes. In the Seven Seals, the advice is, you are the prophet, the fourth seal, Epiphany. Wherever you have a line 4, it can only be opened by your heart. You have to be very gentle with yourself here. Only you can heal your own heart. It is an epiphany waiting to happen. Infinite softness. Yeah, I like that. I don't normally think of the fourth line and I think of softness, but I mean, that's such a nice way to put it, and it kind of shows a lot about how the fourth line works in the world, is like this gentle persistence. I really like that way of describing it. And something we talked about a couple weeks ago was touching on what Chetan Parkin had said about the design Venus being a key to your relationship karma. That was an interesting one. But I think also Mars, I like looking at the planetary archetypes, and I think, I was thinking about that. Maybe we could at some point look at some of the particular placements. Like my design Venus is a first line, but I do have a fourth line. I only have one fourth line. Let's see. I have 29 for personality Mars. That's my only fourth line in the whole body graph. So it's kind of weird when you have very few. I only have 2 second lines. So it's like, what am I mostly dealing with in this life? A lot of fear and a lot of shame. A lot of first lines, a lot of third lines. But then what are the keys to opening up different parts of ourselves? I think it was 2 weeks ago we were looking at Design Venus. It's kind of interesting returning to that through this lens. Like what is your Design Venus line? And Rachel has no fourth lines, so that itself is interesting to have no fourth lines. It's kind of like, I guess you don't have a lot of fixed views, or what else would we say about the lack of fourth lines? But yeah, interesting way of looking at it, of these things from Rudd. Okay, the fifth line. We have 2 more to go. You say you have no influence. Yeah, I don't know. I don't feel that, but maybe in the sense of people copying you, like it's impossible to copy you. We could put it that way. Maybe that's a better way to put it. Fourth lines are things that others can imitate. And if you don't have any fourth lines, no one can imitate you. Maybe a positive way to look at it. Okay, line 5, general keynotes. In the house, this is the second floor with the lights off. Universalization. Hey, I only have one fourth line. It's hard to imitate me, right? They can try, but it's hard. It's like, what are they going to imitate? What is the thing that can be externalized that somebody else can pick up and run with? Because I see fourth lines get ripped off a lot. I've talked to like my 4-6 friends about, and I mean, it really just shows their influence. It's like, what do they say? Imitation is the greatest form of flattery. So it's not a bad thing. I mean, they're being very influential. It's more just like they're doing things in the world that they're externalizing that other people then start doing. The sincerest form of flattery. Yeah, exactly. So, okay, so the fifth line is the second floor with the lights off. Universalization, that's the keynote from Ra. This is about the collective and all of humanity. So we've moved from the community up to humanity. The element is ether, the fifth element. And the physical system is the nervous system, the throat, the thyroid, and the fifth chakra. Its foundational structure is organization. Uh-oh, Jeff has a friend. Come on, get out of here, Jeff's friend. Okay. Its foundational structure is organization. Its quality is leading and practical. We know this about the fifth line, practicality. Its chakra is the fifth chakra, power and projection. Its mystical keynote is the avatar. Wow. There's a lot to live up to. And then high frequency leads through listening and simplifies. Low frequency, self-deluded, tyrannical, hierarchical. I have to wonder how much of either of these frequencies Rudd is thinking of Ra when he writes this. Because, if you're writing your own human design book, you kind of get to draw on people you know. And he's like, what do I have to say about the fifth line? Well, I spent 7 years studying with a fifth line named Ra. What can I write about him? He was at his best when he led through listening. The low frequency is self-deluded, tyrannical, and hierarchical. Fifth lines respond to simple, practical solutions. It's true, if somebody brings me something overly complex, I have the sense it'll never work, or it's a dead end. If somebody brings me something really simple, I like it. So to me, it's like, let's cut to the chase, cut to the point. We don't need to add any risk that it might get really overly complex and confusing and more points of failure. Let's reduce the possible points of failure. Let's make it anti-fragile, so to speak, and let's keep it simple. In the Venus sequence, the Venus wound is delusion and being paranoid. Healing is clarity, far-reaching, practical, and real. The escape strategy is reinforcement and saving others. I wonder what he means by reinforcement. Is it that they escape through getting reinforcements, or they escape through reinforcement? Interesting. Saving others. That's how they escape from themselves. The language pattern is the plural you. The complex, you will all be sorry. You'll be sorry for ignoring me. You'll be sorry about that. Yeah, it's kind of looking at the large group. And then the Saturn sequence going out to, you're saying anti-fragile feels third line? Maybe, but I don't know. I see third lines do really fragile things. Like, I guess the idea of anti-fragile being like, if it could go wrong, it will, so make sure you take care of it. What I mean by anti-fragile is really Nassim Taleb's idea that even something that happens rarely is actually, there's no such thing as rare. Like, with a large enough sample size, rarity doesn't exist. So even something like a plane crash that is a very rare occurrence is actually a common occurrence with a large enough sample set. So the fifth line in me says we have to make sure planes don't crash. It's not good enough to say that it will rarely crash, because the rare is common at a large enough, universal, big enough, zoomed out picture. So that's why I think of anti-fragile, and the fifth line is more just like zooming out and zooming out and zooming out until everything is common. And you're like, yeah, we need to do something about this. We can't just let it happen because it doesn't happen very often. Nothing doesn't happen very often. everything happens often at a large enough time scale. But yeah, maybe 3/5s are the most anti-fragile because they have the combination of like breaking stuff, trying out everything, and the fifth line, which has the need to kind of come up with a practical solution for it. So then Rachel said, third line is purposeful and crash testing. Yeah, I could see that. They're kind of like, I just want to see what happens. Like, it's supposed to be able to make 100 hot dogs a day. Let's see what happens if we turn the machine up to 11 and try to make 1,000. Oh, it broke. I guess it couldn't handle that. So I guess in that sense, the third line is going to discover like what was fragile. So then it is anti-fragile in the sense that it's like discovering that really it's bad design if you allow things to be broken. Like that's always my belief also, is that if you allow the user or the customer to do something wrong, then that's your fault as the designer for designing the system in a way that wrong things could happen. If you have enough safety nets, no matter what they do, it's okay. So at the macro level, the Saturn sequence is the planetary fractal wound of war. So really, yeah, we have fifth lines to blame for that. The racial wound, I'm joking, but it is kind of serious. I am a little bit like, that makes sense. It's probably the fifth lines who are like, paranoid and delusory, and they have the delusions that are like leading their troops to fight each other. Yeah, they're leaders. Exactly. Like we really can blame the fifth lines. Like, let's just be real here. The fifth lines are responsible for war. I get why you don't like us. Because, the fifth lines are the ones who everyone has their faith in and has their beliefs in and are willing to follow into battle. Yeah. The racial wound is tyranny, so the tyrants of the world. It's a fifth line thing. And then the mythic wound is the victim. And this is about being the victim and being the scapegoat and things like that. As a fifth line, I really liked the works of René Girard on scapegoating. He's a cultural anthropologist, and he writes a lot about scapegoating, kind of drawing from the works of Freud and Totem and Taboo, and drawing from Fraser, The Golden Bow, and yeah, he's a really interesting guy. He has a theory of mimesis, mimetic desire. It's the theory that we don't really know what we desire, but that we are taught what to desire, basically. And here I'm going to share one of his. Okay, well, that's the French version of it. Well, anyway, I'll go ahead and share for people who want to follow up on this. But he is a 5/1 after all, so it makes sense that he devoted his life to writing about scapegoating and some of these things. Oh, and now says she found him through Peter Thiel. What an interesting connection that Peter Thiel is into philosophy like that. Cool. Well, I mean, he's a smart guy. Makes sense. What an interesting way to find an obscure French philosopher and cultural anthropologist. Okay, the pearl of the fifth line is... yeah, that's so cool that he's into Girard. Oh, and then Rachel comments she saw one HD Talk show showing three different 5/1 dictators. Yeah, well, it makes sense. I think Hitler was a 5/1. I mean, God. But, it's 16 or 14% of humanity, so we can't draw too many conclusions there. In the Pearl, the fifth line is the line of management. There's a talent for management. Its culture is the empire. Its brand is wisdom or solutions. Come to us because we have all the solutions. In the drama, it's the promoter. Its economy is debt. So it's moved on from loans. It's not credit. It's not loans. It's actual debt. That's a funny one. And its pearl is power. That's what it actually gets, is real power in the world. Fifth lines do have a lot of power. They do wield a lot of power. Line 5 is the Buddhic body. The Buddhic body is the higher octave of the astral body, and as such, well, it makes sense, astral body being the second line, right? Is it? Or did he say that was the third line? Interesting. Physical body was the first line. The astral body is the second line, yeah. Mental body is the third line. The causal body is the fourth line. Now we're at the fifth line, the Buddhic body. And this is the higher octave of the astral body that reveals the pure truth that humanity and all the earth planes are in fact one single organism. Once your awareness is fully anchored in the Buddhic body, the causal body dissolves and reincarnation in the normal sense is no longer possible. It is through the Buddhic body that human beings have access to the field of universal love and the higher ecstasies associated with enlightenment. It represents the third feminine realm of the divine trinity, that of divine activity. Advice: you are Avatar, the fifth seal, forgiveness. Wherever you have a line 5, you have a story running inside your being. Forgiving everyone else is forgiving yourself. It's your own tyranny of your belief system. You have a trip running here. You will have to dismantle it yourself, as it is sucking your life force. So this is the belief system trip, or the BS, as Robert Anton Wilson called it. And finally, this brings us to line 6. And I know Jeff and his friend are excited about this because they're really dancing all around. Okay. Line 6, the general keynotes of line 6. This is the roof, the keynote of transition. Transition is from Ra. That's his term for it. And we've moved on to the universe, cosmos, and spirit. Its element is the earth of the next realm. So it's already looking at the next earth, the new earth. Its physical system is the endocrine, meridians, the head, and chakras 6 and 7. The prime gifts of the 6th line, the foundation structure is objectivity. That's another keynote from Ra. The quality is overseeing and visionary. The chakras are the higher chakras, education and surrender. So the chakras beyond the head and the 6th and 7th chakra. The mystical keynote is the magus. The high frequency is wise, accessible, and ahead of its time. The low frequency is aloof, arrogant, and inaccessible. And it responds to patience. Patience, that's nice. So patience from others or just in general? I guess so. I guess they want others to be patient. And when someone shows a lot of patience, they get access to the 6th line's wisdom. In the Venus sequence, the wound is separation, disconnected, discarnate, and aloof. So disconnected with their own body, separate from things. Healing comes as visionary, transcendent, and the big picture. Their escape strategy is over-sincerity, trying to be so sincere. And their language pattern is they, the conspiracy. They are out to get me. At a macro level, the Saturn sequence has the planetary fractal wound of indifference. This is the indifference of the planet, the fact that someone can be lying on the street suffering and someone else just steps over them. The indifferent crowd, indifferent to the plight of each other, aloof to the plight of each other. The racial wound is annihilation, and the mythic wound is obsession. I guess it's the obsession that leads to the indifference, obsessed with our own personal lives, making us indifferent to others. In the Pearl, 6 lines have a talent for philanthropy. Their culture is the system. Their brand is vision and education. In the drama, they're the audience. I love that. Their economy is investment. And their pearl is nature. It's funny, they're the ones who invest. It's not like the debt economy of the 5th line, who's living in debt. The 6th line is investing and seeing a return. And at their highest pearl, they get the nature. So they don't want power. They don't want to be celebrities. They don't want, the influence, or they don't want to be charitable even, I guess. They just want to achieve nature. It's interesting to achieve to nature. And then here's the last 2 bits we'll read, and then maybe we can have a little discussion if anyone has any comments, and then we'll wrap it up. Yeah, Rachel says, they just want what is. I like that. All right, the Corpus Christi, from the Corpus Christi, line 6 is the Atmic body, the Atma. As the higher octave to the mental body, the Atmic body allows human beings access to the higher evolutions outside the process of physical incarnation. Whilst the Buddhic body always retains its connection to humanity through its compassion, the Atmic body brings awareness into the cosmic field of Christ consciousness, directly merging your awareness into the divine mind and heart, the second aspect of the Holy Trinity. It is through the Atmic body that the great avatar streams enter the world. It is also the realm of the siddhis, the many miraculous manifestations of the divine. And a final word from Rudd. The advice here. You are Magus, the sixth seal, truth. Wherever you have a line 6, you have something of a higher reality trying to incarnate in you. You have to become that higher reality and bring it to earth. It's not enough to have the vision. You must allow it to manifest in your physical life and body. Watch yourself when you disappear. Notice how you disengage, and wait until you come back. In time, you will fully arrive as long as you become aware of the times when you are not emotionally or energetically present. Presence is the key. All right. Any comments? Any thoughts on any of this in general? I know that we kind of went through a lot of material, but very poetic. I really I liked what you pointed out earlier now about how the words themselves have energetic keys to the etheric realm in some sense. Like even just hearing some of these things was very comforting to me. It was kind of like, I feel more at peace. You know, I sometimes get a lot of aggression and hostility and anger and things like that. And hearing Rudd kind of calms me down. It's like the flute that soothes the beast a little bit. And yes, thank you, Shango. I appreciate that. And thanks to Richard Rudd for creating these interesting keynotes and going deep in his own mystical journey to uncover these aspects of the lines. Yeah, please.
Yeah, that was really great. Thank you. I definitely loved. I want to look at the transcript of this chat too. It was like a lot of great stuff listed out there. That last thing you just read about the 6 align, the magus, that's I've never even heard that word really. I got to look that up and research it more.
Well,
It's very
it's the first. It's like the sorcerer. It's the first tarot card of the major arcana, right? Isn't it the one?
yeah. The magician or the mage is kind of like what it made me think, but
Yeah,
I've never.
it's no, it's the same. It's totally the same. It's like an alchemical sorcerer, magician, mage. Absolutely.
And then the whole thing where he's talking about like how you like there's a part wherever you have the 6, there's
It,
I mean
oh
wherever
wait! I think we have something from now. Are you reading a book on them? Is that is
what?
it Magister Ludi or which one is it? Oh, it's the
Oh my
novel
God,
by
I
John.
actually, yeah, I have the John Fowles book.
The John Fowles. Oh, that's wonderful.
I don't know if it's, yeah, it's not picking
Oh,
up,
there we
but
go.
it's
It's
Magus.
blinking in and out. I saw it for a
Yeah.
second. There it is. There it
Oh,
is.
oh my
Although
God.
I do have Magister Ludi just right over on my book.
Okay, of course you do. Of course you do.
Yeah, and now you're a 4/6, so that's perfect. You actually have a book that says Magus in your possession. So but this whole thing about you have something of a higher reality trying to incarnate in you, and it's not enough that to have the vision. You have to like actually bring it to earth in your physical thing. And then that whole thing about watching yourself disappear, and that was like really trippy. I have to like meditate on that for myself. But the thing, it's like this is totally like where the role model thing it like gives a newer, deeper understanding to like because that's a weird thing. Like the role model, I'm always like, what the fuck does this even mean? And then you hear people talk about, oh, it's a role model of yourself to yourself and all it. And it's like, and then I think about the 6th line, like being a perfectionist and wanting it to be like the role model version. Like I want to be a model citizen type of thing, or like a model, whatever, this and that. It's like this best version of whatever it is in your imagination that thing is. And so it's like this is kind of like reminding me of that. It's like this, and then when it said like the weak point or something was over sincerity, I was like, that's weird. That like kind of like was like caught me. I'm like, that doesn't really make sense right away. But then I'm like, oh yeah, I can see how it could be just like just trying too hard, too much, like being so, insistent.
Well, and over sincerity can be a form of arrogance because it can feel like you're the sincere one and others aren't, and it can actually be like I call 6 lines out on this a lot. That one made so much sense to me because I see sixth lines on the roof like being so earnest and so sincere, but it's like a pose, and they have to realize that that is a way of letting themselves off the hook for their indifference, because they're like, I really tried, I wanted so much for it to be that. It's almost like the cure for over sincerity is no excuses. Over sincerity is an excuse. It's like, I tried so hard, I did it so much, I cared so much, and it's like, yeah, you're like showing off how much you cared, but really you're indifferent about 99 other things. This is the one time that you really went out of your way to I don't know. I see the hiding behind the sincerity as a very sixth line thing. I've never really made the connection to it so much as a sixth line, but I have noticed sixth lines kind of hiding in the same way that like I really liked when he kind of called out the second lines of being really provocative but denying it, like the popcorn thing where they like want to see people fight, so they have the popcorn, so they make a fight, and then they're like, oh, I didn't mean to do that, eat the popcorn furiously, like they're being really provocative. Well, the sixth line can be like so sincere. Now says, quote, I didn't care that much. That's an interesting way of looking at it. Like, are you saying like they wouldn't, they're over sincere and then they kind of take a step back, or how is that? I mean, what would you say about that?
Oh, I was just no, I don't even know where I was going with that. But I agree with you, the over sincerity.
Yeah.
There's
Well, yeah.
some signaling. I think it's a signaling thing.
Yeah, that's what I was really
I
noticing
think,
is it's almost like just like own up to the fact that you don't care instead of like trying to be
yeah, that was where
so.
I was going with
Yeah,
this.
just like own it. Like I have this with Mike a lot. I'm like, it's okay, Mike. You really don't have to care about it. And he's like, but I do care. I care about everything. And I'm like, no, you don't need to. Like when you care about everything, you're kind of like trying so hard. It's like you don't need to try. Like I think we like our sixth lines better when they don't try and they kind of just own up to not trying in a way. What was the thing that the sixth line responds to? That's something I'm curious about. Like what was the sixth line? Because each one has something that it really responds to. Oh, I guess I closed the doc, but let me see. Did it say what they respond to?
Patient.
Oh, patience. Yeah, patience. I like that. I like that a lot. That one actually helps me more than any of them. Is like, what do they respond to? It makes me realize that not everybody responds to the same thing, and that I'm kind of foolish to demand people to respond to me by not speaking their language. Like if I'm being really impatient and the six lines is going to be like, oh God, Jonah's being so impatient, like leave me alone, Jonah. Or if I'm like having really high stakes, like for the third line, like putting a bunch of pressure on them and like being like, so you're going to be here at this time and you're going to do it like this, right? And then they're like, Jonah, back off, like stop pressuring me. But then also realizing that what I respond to, if somebody comes to me with practicality or with like a heart-centered direct communication, like, yeah, I'm a 5-1. I respond to those things a lot. So I have another little tiny Magus story. This is just one of the funny bits of the Magus. If you look at your birth tarot card of the major arcana, you can see what themes you have, and mine is actually the Magus. So I am a Magus, and I have a good friend Andrew, and he's also a Magus. The way you do it is you just add up your birth date. So I'm like 9/25/1983, 9 plus 2 plus 5 plus 1 plus 9 plus 8 plus 3. And you keep doing it, and you figure out what, you don't have to do it right now, unless you want to now. If you want to do it, okay, she's doing it. She's doing it. She's going for it. There's also a little calculator. I'll share the tarot birth card calculator here. It's on Tarot School,
So
I
that would
believe.
help. Probably a
Yeah,
smarter
yeah.
idea than doing it by hand.
Yeah. It's nice. This is okay. That's the articles, and then here is the calculator. The article index is really good, though. I highly recommend reading them. So the calculator, yeah, like I'm actually Magus wheel sun, because mine results in 19, and so because I have birth 19, 19 is the sun, 1 plus 9 is 10, which is the wheel of fortune, 1 plus 0 is 1, which is the Magus. So I'm like a sun wheel Magus, basically. And there's different variations. Some people are just wheel Maguses. But anyway, so I'm a Magus. Actually, my former partner and co-founder of HDHD conference, Jenny V, she was a Magus. I know a bunch of Maguses in my life.
It's my favorite tarot card actually.
Is the Magus? That's your favorite card? Yeah, it's the alchemy. I mean, it's a magical card. It's like trying to pull it off, and sometimes you get your eyebrows sizzled. But in any case, I had a fun story with it, which is that I have a good friend, Andrew Banowitz, and we didn't know he was a magus at the time, but this made perfect sense. He was asking me what the tarot cards were about. And I was like, oh, well, you just pick one. He'd never picked tarot in his entire life. He had never ever drawn a card or anything. And he's like, he's kind of young, and he's like, and he kept saying, oh, I think they have these tarot cards at this bookstore, Jonah. And I'm like, which one? And he goes, it's that one in the U District. I say, oh, Magus Books. Because in Seattle, there's a famous bookstore called Magus Books. Magus. They've been around since the 1970s. And they have lots of esoteric. And he goes, it's right on 45th. And I'm like, Magus. And he's like, no, it's like right, it's that one. It's like has a green logo. I'm like, Magus. And like I say it like 3 times. And then he draws the Magus card from the Crowley deck. And I'm a Magus and he's a Magus. And the very first tarot card he's ever pulled is the Magus. And he's like, oh, it's Magus Books. Like when he reads it. And like it's one of those things, he's a self-projected projector. He like wasn't hearing me. I have an undefined throat. He's like, what's that bookstore called? I'm like, Magus. He's like, what is it called? So I literally had to say it 3 times, and then he drew the card. And it's a cool bookstore. It's a good one. I highly recommend it if you ever visit Seattle. So I have one tiny little story about Magus Books, which is my good friend Von Paul, who just had his 75th birthday. He was draft dodging for the Vietnam War, and he hid out in the basement of Magus Books for a few weeks. They actually like put him up and hid him in the basement there, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so didn't anyone else do their birth card? Did you do your birth card now?
Yeah, I got 2 of them. Well, it's giving me 2.
Yeah, there will be 2 because one will reduce to the other. It's like they're the octave of each other. So which 2 did you
Oh,
get?
okay. Yeah, so I got the Hierophant.
Oh, I know the Hierophant very well. Yeah, and then that also, what is the Hierophant's? It's 14 and 5. Is that right?
So Temperance, which would reduce to the Hierophant.
Yeah, so Hierophant, yeah, I think it's 14 and 5. That one you probably would do very well with like systems or like large organizations. Like you don't really even need to go to a college. You can just use all the college's resources. Like institutional resources are probably big for you. Well, you did
Oh,
go to
you have
college
no
already,
idea how
so.
much I love to hear that.
Yeah, that's like you're here to like make the fullest use of institutional resources. Like if you go into a new city, just walk into the hotel, grab a cup of coffee, not your hotel, just any hotel. Like institutional resources are there for your taking, basically. Shango says Hanged Man and Empress. Yeah, well, you are absolutely an Empress. And the Hanged Man is very philosophical and inquisitive and questioning and things like that. So yeah, and of course you can read about them. I posted the article link above. They're pretty cool archetypes. I really like the major. I like all of the tarot. The major arcana has more connection to Chaldean numerology. Oh, Rachel's also a Temperance Hierophant. So you're both people that can. It is the same as now, absolutely, yeah. And that's the yeah, isn't it like 14 and 5? It's the one that there's other parts of it too, but one aspect of it is being, as I was mentioning, connected to the institutional. The other is like the Hierophant's kind of the one who's it's almost like Virgil for Dante, the psychopomp figure, the figure that guides you through the dream world, the figure that introduces you to the archetypes, that gets up on stage and kind of shows the different images of the other world, like the presenter of the mysteries to the masses. In the Eleusinian mysteries and things like that, there was always a hierophant who was the person that would kind of present to all the guests and visitors the cast of characters of the underworld and the cast of characters of the gods, and kind of almost like a mercurial figure, like introducing the archetypes to the masses. And yeah, love this archetype discussion. Me too. It's definitely something near and dear to me. Well, I think I'm going to wrap up for today, but I loved going into all these keynotes with all of you. Thank you all so much for all the great comments. And someone talked to me about the Eleusinian mysteries sometime. Yeah, it's like, talk Eleusinian to me. That's a good catchphrase there. No, I'm very interested in, yeah, that's definitely a t-shirt that needs to be made. Talk Eleusinian to me, baby. All right. Shango, thanks for the tarot links. Yeah, absolutely. We can always go into the tarot, Chaldean numerology, any of it. I do like, keeping it somewhat related to human design, but at the same time, we can always venture. It's always fun to venture forth. And thanks for that, Rachel. Yeah, thanks everyone for coming, and I'll see you all soon. I'm looking forward to it. Okay, take care.